Welcome everyone, Jay Michaels here with USFastTrack.ca. We just finished up our first meetup group with Canadians in US real estate on last Sunday, July 22nd. It ran from 11 to 12:30, but we stayed there quite a bit because we had such great people that came out, great conversation, a lot of great ideas thrown back and forth. The actual presentation, we had it on Canadians in financing U.S. property, so people got good feedback with the presentation, which we appreciate that. But for all those who missed it, we have our presentation, which we'll upload it to YouTube here, and everyone can learn from it. So about us, we're Canadians who buy real estate in the United States. We mainly focus on buy, fix, and flip to retail buyers in the U.S. That's homeowners. We also buy, fix, and rent out, and sometimes sell those rentals to Canadians who are looking for high cash flow. We focus on high performance, cash flow, and returns for our investors and ourselves. Our primary market that we buy in is Atlanta, Georgia. We won't go into too much detail because this presentation is not really about what we do, but just a little background on what we have done. Some of our projects. So here we have a purchase price, $53,000. We put in usually anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 into our properties, depending on the property. Days on the market for this one was 3 days and was under contract. Total hold time from purchase to selling date was 98 days. Profit on that one was $19,500. Return on our ROI, or return on investment, 26%, and annualized ROI was 97%. So, and as you can see, although we're buying cheap property, it's an actual house. It's they're nice, but you know, we bring it to the retail end of how it looks. So another example is this one. We bought at $62,000, put in $18,000. Days on market was 6. Total hold time was 94 days from purchase to sale. Profit on this one was $26,000, just under $500 there. 32% ROI, and our annual ROI was 125%. So as you can see, this is the type of stuff that we like to see. Our investors love it. They love those high returns, and that's why we focus on Georgia, because we could do these types of deals. But that's all we'll talk about regarding our stuff, just to give you an idea. So now we're going to go into the main presentation of financing options for Canadians buying real estate in the United States. So what we'll be talking about are basically types of financing available. Why talk about financing first? Some Canadian banks and United States affiliates, other people's money, and just basic other things to know. This presentation is not going to be as long as the actual one we did. We like to do open discussion as we do our presentations, so they run a lot longer than we kind of hope for, but it's all because we get great feedback. A lot of people in our group, we have a lot of experience, from some people doing multi-$7 million deals to first timers or people that have just bought 1 or 2 properties. And I'll tell you right now, we're learning stuff from people that are just getting into it, and people that have been doing it for many years. So always learning, which is good. Alright, financing options. So basically, for the average person, we have, obviously, if you have cash from personal savings or investments lying around, you can take that cash and purchase a property. That could be $50,000 to $10 million. If you had that type of money, you can just put offers in and close deals just like that. Number 2 is obviously conventional loans, which are banks that are willing to finance either a second home or investment property in the United States for Canadians. That's basically exactly like how it would work in Canada. There's banks that will leverage, you put your money in and they'll give you a loan. usually the cheapest money you can really afford. Next to obviously lines of credit, heat locks, credit cards, any type of leveraging any type of personal property and all that to get loans and to purchase property. So obviously, if you had personal lines of credit of $50,000, you could it acts like cash at the end of the day, but you would have monthly payments to make on that money. I put credit cards there, but like I tell people, like you don't. To me, first of all, credit cards are usually limited to a certain amount of money. They're better used for renovations and all that. But I've never bought a property with a credit card, and I've bought some cheap properties. So, but technically, if you have a high limit credit card and low interest rate on it, it's accessible, so you can use it. Last one there, we have other people's money. I also put hard money loans in there. We'll talk about hard money loans a little bit later, but other people's money is basically using other people's money for your projects. That's a lot of business that we get is from other people's money. So it's just anywhere from doing loans from people to joint venture agreements, working with investors. That's will fall under that category. And like I said, hard money loans we'll discuss a little bit later. All right, brings us to our next topic. Why focus on financing first? Basically, knowing what you can afford or what you are able to spend will dictate where you're going to buy or what you're going to buy. Obviously, foreclosures and short sales, which is a lot of my business, you need to know your financing prior because depending where you're buying, like we buy in a market where it's very heavy, swamped with investors. So we need to close fast to make our offer be appealing and whatnot to get it through. So having our finances up front and taking away that clause for financing is we leverage that. So something to think about when you get into those markets. And also cash flow needed. Obviously, if you're borrowing money and your monthly payment on that money is $500, you can't really purchase a property that's going to bring you rental income of $300 unless you want to take a negative cash flow. So we'll go into more of this on the next slide here. But so affordability, basically what you can afford is going to obviously most states alone from New York to Los Angeles, Florida are considered more expensive states versus Detroit, Ohio, some cities in other states. So that's at the end of the day, there's cheap property in every state, even in like New York and LA. There's cheap property still in those areas, but at the end of the day, it's going to dictate where you're going to start looking if your funds are definitely limited to a certain degree. Location within states and cities. Are you looking at beachfront versus downtown and suburbs? In the inner city, outer city? Which county? Obviously, beachfront property, no matter where it is always going to have kind of a premium cost to it, especially in some of the sexy markets like Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale. These places come with a price, and they have dropped with the economy coming down. But if you're limited to $50,000, chances are you're not buying right on the water. Definitely gonna need some more money for that. But that's just talking about location. Also, type of structure: condo, townhouse, single family, duplex, multifamily. Like I said, if you have $50,000, chances are you're not gonna buy a single family home on the water. So that's definitely why you need your financing kind of lined up or what you can spend in order to start looking. For our next slide here, we have foreclosures and short sales. So I put up there just terms on your offer. Typical offers, you're going to have your earnest deposit, and that can range from 1 to 10% or even higher. I know some investors put down half the purchase price just to kind of put a leverage on their offer. I don't really suggest that, but Financing. See, if you need a loan, if a bank is giving you financing, but it needs to be pending upon bank approval, you have to put in your term a financing clause. Because you do not want your offer falling through because you can't get financing. If you didn't put that clause in there and you put down $5,000 to hold that property, and you come to the bank and tell them you could not get financing and you didn't have that clause in there, they're keeping your money, $5,000 or whatever you put down. So that's the key element to this whole presentation, is knowing what you can afford and what kind of cash. At the end of the day, a lot of Canadians, you're going to be borrowing lines of credit and refinancing other properties in Canada or in the US. And if you have that, once you have that money in your bank account, or you can borrow from that, it's a cash offer. You would show proof of funds as a line of credit or whatever. It's proof of funds as that whatever that number is, that line of credit or whatever. We had a question that came up: can I use proof of funds in Canadian funds? From my experience, I've used proof of funds in Canadian money, and I've never had my offer get rejected for that reason. Now, the gentleman that brought it up, Ray, great guy, he said that he had an offer fall through because of that. But it was also to do with commercial type stuff. I don't know if it has, because of that, that's the reason. But at the end of the day, I always ask when I get an offer rejected why it was rejected. Most of the time, it's because offers were much higher or something in that lines of for the reason. But also, we put in due diligence. Obviously, there's going to be a time period that we can investigate furthermore with the property, and obviously closing date and any other terms that we put into our offers. Which, for other terms, I would definitely, what I put in my offers is make sure all utilities are on during inspection, so that you can pretty much test everything of the property. At the end of the day, if you're replacing everything, it may not really be an issue, but still, I always tell them turn on all the utilities, because most of the time they don't have the utilities on, and you won't know there's a leak in the plumbing without testing the water and having the water on. You don't want to find that out after, that's for sure. So that's just the main focus there was the financing clause. Obviously, if you can, like I said, if you're dealing with cash, it's a cash offer. They like those the best, especially with foreclosure short sales. And like I said, if you're dealing in inexpensive areas, there's high competition, or like just great locations in general, putting that leverage of cash offer is going to make your offer more appealing. So cash flow needed. Basically, it's exactly like I said before. If you borrow in Canada and you have rental income in the U.S., make sure that like at some point, if you're borrowing in Canada, you're gonna have to exchange. You might have to exchange money monthly to pay those Canadian loans. I usually tell people to pay off your Canadian loans with Canadian money, in the sense like don't try to borrow or exchange money on a monthly basis. What you want to do is hopefully you have a job here or some other income to support your loans. And what you do is, like, every quarter, pool all your US money and then exchange it, or wait till it's in a favor for you to exchange it. Because also at some point you might need USD, which is United States dollar, to fix stuff or purchase more property. And you don't want to get in the whole game of changing money back and forth monthly and changing it back again, because you'll always be on the losing end of that bargain. You may get a good buy, but when you go to sell it or buy back the Canadian dollar, you're losing. So you definitely want to keep that in mind when you're borrowing money from Canada. Most people have a job and they'll say, hey, I'll just pay off my Canadian loan with my job money coming in, and I'll just save my money. That's the best thing. But at some point, it's like, we flip property, and when we need money, Canadian money, we eventually we buy Canadian money. So something to keep in mind. So like I said, Canadian income or rental income is always going to be U.S. income, and to pay your Canadian loans, you're going to need to exchange money if you and know what it's costing you to do that. So Okay, so next we have Canadian banks and U.S. affiliates. So they're not all up here, but this slide gives you an understanding of usually most Canadian banks are affiliated with someone in the U.S. For example, TD Canada is with TD Canada US. They're mainly along the east side, but I believe they, when you work with them, they'll pretty much loan anywhere in the US. Another example, HSBC Canada is well, if you establish a relationship with HSBC Canada, they'll transfer your information, Canadian credit and all that, to HSBC International. Now, it came up in the meeting that they're not one of the better ones. I've never used them myself. I've actually tried to contact them a few times. I have a contact info for the International, but we were playing tag on the phone for so long and still haven't heard from them. But RBC Canada is actually with RBC Centura, which they actually got bought out by PNC, which is Pittsburgh Bank. They're one of the, I love them just for many reasons, but they're a lot of ones that people have good things to say about. They're PNC though in the U.S., but I think the Canadians still all work under the PNC, or no, sorry, RBC Centura group, which is RBC in the U.S. Bank of Montreal, Harris Bank in the U.S. So that's a good, that's a big bank, which is good. Scotia Bank does not have any ties in the U.S. They're mainly in international, Caribbean type stuff for lending. So anyone with Scotia Bank, they don't have any affiliates. But like I say to anyone, always check with your bank what they can offer you. Most banks will say, we can give you a line of credit, or we can refinance some of your properties in Canada and use that money to buy in the U.S. And then they'll roll, sometimes they'll roll the loan or the line of credit into a mortgage on one of your properties, which is great, because if you have some of your lines of credit will have a 3% payment per month, but low interest on it. So you're paying low interest, but you're actually paying a high payment per month. Now, if you roll that into a mortgage over 25 years or whatever, now it's down to a cheap, if you only borrowed $50,000 or $100,000, it's very inexpensive monthly payment, which will look good for your cash flowing properties. U.S. banks, we were talking about Washington Federal. We actually are going to bring it up in a little bit here, but they had a program for Canadians. Like I said, when I pulled all this information was from a couple months back, and my contact info for the Washington Federal Bank, I couldn't get in touch with her, because some of these programs, sometimes you got to remember, like, banks change policies and stuff like daily, hourly sometimes. So just because you read something a couple months ago does not mean they still have or offer that today. But it's just something to we're gonna discuss Washington Federal in a bit here. I think it comes up next or down the line. But next we have Canadian banks may offer you. So this is exactly what we were talking about, how basically you apply for funds, get a line of credit or whatnot. Do not exchange money right away, because I'll tell you right now, it's depending on what market you're buying in and how aggressive your offers are, it may take you a while to get a contract or a property under contract or something even in the works. So what I tell people is, have your line of credit ready or your funds kind of ready, but keep an eye on your exchange rate. Obviously, if it's cash, if you just have cash lying around, you're just pretty much going to be watching exchange rates. Once you have a exchange rate that's in your favor, you're going to exchange your money and keep it in USD. But if you have a line of credit, you don't want to start paying money on or interest on your money without having a property purchase. So what I always say is, basically, have your line of credit ready, purchase a property, and then once you have your closing date, 30 days or whatever, 60 days, whatever the terms are, definitely start watching that exchange rate. And then once something's in your favor or a good exchange rate you believe, purchase a USD. close on the property. And then, like I said, this is something you need to talk to your bank prior. See if they can roll the line of credit or whatnot into a mortgage. That will bring your payments down much lower. And it might even, your interest rate might go down, or depending on what your line of credit is or what type of funds you lined up. So here we have the Washington Federal. So this is actually from, like, when I contacted them. This is from last year, but like I said, this might be, from what I heard, this is still, they still have something like this available. We're just going to go through what actually, just some of the requirements here, just to give everyone an idea. Like I said, this could have changed, but just to give you an idea. So this was for a second home. For all those who wanted a place in Phoenix or Florida, so they would do only single family residence only. So no multifamily, no condos, no condo conversions, townhomes, manufactured homes. That's very important because a lot of people might have been looking for something in Florida, and they want right on the water, so obviously it's going to be condos, and this program does not offer for that. Minimum loan amount is $50,000. Most banks conventionally will not loan under $50,000. It's just at some point it's too small of money for them to be borrowing. Maximum here is $500,000. They had a 30-year fixed rate, also available 15-year term, which is pretty standard. Loan to value is 65% or less. So typically loans in Canada, for investors out there, it's usually 80%, 70%. So you need 30 to 20% or 20 to 30% down. Or here you need 35% or obviously less, which is a huge chunk, which is still, I don't mind paying that if, because 65%, like I said, there's not a lot of banks offering much. It's better than 100% paying cash. And then they have their prepayment penalties and no secondary financing allowed. Obviously, that's anyone who deals with loans. The major banks usually don't go second position to nobody. So then, same Washington Federal. This is their investment loan, Canadian investment loans. So once again, single family residence only. Maximum or minimum loan was $50,000. Loan to value was 65% or less, which is good. Season requirements 12 months. So that's they needed you to have it for 12 months. So that's something you need to, if you're using something like this, to keep in mind that you're going to be carrying that property for 12 months first, and then get a refi on the property. 30-year fixed rate, which is pretty standard, and obviously secondary and all that. Once again, so Harris Bank, this is something I pulled up. So just to give everyone an idea, they had full documentation needed, 30% down payment, 40% debt to income ratio, 640 credit, and they pull this stuff from Bank of Montreal. So if you have bank accounts from there, which is great, you already have that relationship, they're going to carry that on to Harris. And if you don't, I believe you just set it up and start the whole process or start the relationship. I've just threw it up there just to give everyone an idea what it's not going to be definitely no 20% down or less. You're going to be higher up. Other people's money. So this is, like I said, what a lot of my business falls into, which is either loans, which we borrow from investors, and we give security of the assets. So like for example, my stuff I do, if we purchase a property at $50,000 and we put in, just say we need to put in $20,000 into it, we would borrow the $50,000 from investor one, and we would give an interest rate. If we're flipping the property, we do minimum 6-month term, and we do from 10 to 15%, and we pay full interest. If we sell the property in 90 days, they get, if we said 10%, they get 10%, which would be $5,000. They would get $55,000 check. They get first position on that property. So regardless of us putting in $20,000 of our own money, their money is before our money. So their loan to value, we'd be selling that house, example, at $100,000. Their loan to value would be 50%, which is much lower than any bank. That's an example. For joint ventures, so other people's money, you can use obviously joint ventures. So it's basically offering equity of the deal. So same example, we purchased that property at $50,000, put 20 into it. We typically on a joint venture we would we would ask for more than 50,000. It would be anywhere from 60 and maybe even full. But we would start an entity with that investor, and we would be the general partner. They would be limited to what they invest in. And what happens is we would give them half the deal. So if the deal itself made 20,000, they'd make their 10, we make our 10, and that's how that structure is set up. Obviously, everyone's joint venture is going to be different. You could be doing 60-40 splits. You could be doing 50-50s. It all depends on your business model. But our business model, we don't have a set in stone. We have a generic one, but there's certain people we work with. It's different relationships, and it varies from investors. But just to give you an example. All right, so other things to know, like we were talking about before, is foreign exchange rate. We'll go into more detail with this, but there's different companies that's all they focus on is foreign exchange. So, and they basically watch rates. They offer a better exchange rate than if you were to go to TD or RBC and just get them to pull a rate for you. We'll touch base on that in a bit, but high interest loans, HML is hard money loans. For those who don't know what a hard money loan is, it's basically like it's companies that will fund you money, and they will fund you within 5 days sometimes. But it's like basically they're a credit card to you. They loan you the money, and it's really fast and easy to secure. But what happens is they secure it by the property, and it's high interest. We're talking anywhere from 15 to 20%. There's usually a couple points up front. You're gonna need still 20% in the deal. And like I said, it's on average you're paying a couple grand up front plus your interest of 18%. So I just tell people, make sure you're aware of what you're borrowing if you're using this. Like, we turn over property pretty fast. I don't even use hard money. I have companies calling me all the time trying to get me to loan them money, but the way I do it is like we work with investors, and it's like if I can offer the same return for an investor here, I don't need to jump through all the paperwork that they're going to make me sign, and they hide a lot of their fees through, or their income is, they charge a lot of fees and all that, which is how they make their money. And to me, it's like you don't need to do all that, especially if you have a good track record and you build your network around you. There's so many people out there that want a good return on their on their money. So, but it's an option. Also, portfolio loans. Now, it actually works really well if you have a lot of property that are cheap property that you can't get loans on. What it is, it's commercial lending, and they basically will pool your properties or a bunch of properties together, and they'll give you a big mortgage for all and they look at the properties from what they're making. So it's kind of like a business. There's a lot of commercial lending. It's a lot easier to get, but like I said, you need a few properties to be doing this. But it's something to keep in mind if you're trying to build up a portfolio in the U.S. It's a great way to free up some money and buy more property. Refinancing options. Now, keep in mind, refinancing is definitely an option, but I always tell people, like, don't expect it anytime soon. Everyone's in a different situation. Like, there's people that I know that are Canadians that have great relationships with U.S. banks, and they get refi right away. But for the average Joe, I always tell them like 12 to 24 months, and because the banks want to see income on the property. They want to see, they want to make sure you're not a liability. But there's a lot of companies out there too, U.S. companies, and they say, they sell to Canadians and they tell Canadians, yeah, you'll be able to refi in 12 months. And I always ask them, like, has anyone ever refied in 12 months that you know of? And all they've told me, well, no, and I tell them, like, why do you tell people that? And they're like, well, that's just what I tell people. And I tell them, like, you shouldn't be telling people unless you know for a fact that you have people that have done it. And that's the difference with U.S. companies. Like, although they're selling their product, they don't come from Canada. They don't understand the whole Canadian side of things. They just look at Canadians like, hey, this is a cash buyer pretty much. Although we might be borrowing money, to them it's a cash buy because we have the money lined up before coming into the deal. We're not relying on U.S. Financing through banks. But refinancing definitely an option. Talk to banks and your bank, Canadian bank and their affiliates to see if it's what they can do for you. So back to foreign exchange rates. Like I said, there's a bunch of companies out there, and we put up Knightsbridge Exchange, FX.com. They're one of the ones. There's all kinds. At the end of the day, but what you got to remember with these companies are, make sure that you find out, like, minimum, what are they minimally exchange? What's their minimum exchange? Some are 2,500, some are 5,000 increments, some are 10 grand. So find out. Also find out what do they charge to exchange. Most of them will just incorporate their fees and all that into their exchange rate. So you usually just call and they'll just give you a quote, the best they can do for you. Obviously, the more you exchange, usually the better rate you'll get because they're buying in bulk. But like I said, there are some that will change and charge you a fee. These companies will wire money. Usually, some of them wire it for free to different bank accounts or for your closing date, which is great. Time frame. This is something that you should know. If you're closing on a property in 5 days and you're working with a company that can't exchange and fund within 5 days, obviously that's not going to work. Usually these companies too are free to sign up. So what I tell people is, like, kind of build relationships with a few. And what you do is just call for rates when you're exchanging money. Some of these guys, what they'll do is they'll ask you, like, how often do you exchange money? If you say monthly, what they'll do is they'll put you on their alert and they'll say, like, get an idea what you're exchanging per month. And then they'll phone you up being like, hey, Mike, are you changing money this month? 10,000 because we're expecting it to drop in the next couple of days and you should probably lock in a rate. We're going to get a good rate. It might go back up. And so that's their job. That's all they do all day. So it's something you should keep in mind compared to going to your local bank and, all the major banks in Canada. They make a profit and they don't offer the best rate. I find myself, RBC or TD, they have if you open a foreign account with them, you'll get a better price than if you were to go to a teller and just say, what's the exchange rate. There's a premium. It's like it knocks off 1% or something. But it's enormously different compared to most banks out there. But even if you're shopping around at the local banks, all the major banks around you, I always tell people just call. Treat it like a business. Like, if you save $50, that's dinner, or that's $50 in your pocket, man. Who wants to? That's your phone bill, maybe not your phone bill. Our phone bills are definitely higher than $50, but it's something to keep in mind. So here we go. Canadian banks and U.S. exchange. So this is bringing you back to what I was just talking about. You definitely want to, like, if you're part of the different banks, you can call them up and get exchange rates right over the phone. But like I said, most of them are not going to offer you really competitive rates compared to some of these companies. Now, at the same time, if you're just exchanging $1,000 or $2,000, it's kind of, it's not a big cost if you're overpaying. But like I said, if you're buying 200,000, 300,000, 50,000, 10,000, and you can get a better rate, 1%, 2% better, it's now you're looking at big money. And put that towards your rental property or your funds to repair something. And so it's something to think about. But like I said, in general, the major Canadian banks are not going to offer the, the good thing is most of them will exchange any increment of money, from $1,000, if you want to do $500 to and up, compared to the exchange companies, but it's not the greatest rate. So here we just have the loonie. So the diagram here, we had year 2000, we put up the rate. It was as high as 0.6789. 2006, 6 years later, we had 0.8861. When I pulled this, which was July 20th, was 9875, which is great. It's obviously been higher, it's been lower, but right now we're sitting at that. Experts are predicting it to stay around 95 cents. I always tell people, like especially right now, if you can exchange money and get $1 for $1 CAD, that's perfect, because it just treats your US money like Canadian money, or dollar for dollar. The problem is when you start exchanging money back and forth, you're always gonna, like I said, you're always gonna be on the losing end, either buying or selling. So you don't really want to get in that game of buying and selling constantly. Even with my business, I deal with USD, so any investor, they deal with their own exchange. I can always sometimes I need Canadian dollars, so I work with some investors, and I can usually maybe give them a good rate depending on what they're buying, how much they're buying, and how much I need. But like I said, if you can get dollar for dollar, is great. At the end of the day, don't get too tied up with following the dollar constantly. It's a good thing to keep an eye on, but hopefully you're not exchanging money back and forth constantly, because you'll be losing. Like I said, you could be losing 5% every time you exchange if you bought in, depending on when you bought it, and that's going to affect your return on your money throughout the year. But just to keep it in mind. And that pretty much sums up our presentation. For those who came out, we had a good discussion throughout this presentation, and we had good feedback from everyone. So we're hoping next time everyone can kind of come out. This just touched general basics on some of the stuff that's available for Canadians, but it's just to give you an idea. Like I said, at the end of the day, I think you really need to touch base with whoever you bank with, and go from there. And then at some point, build relationships with other banks, especially the U.S. banks, because they're always looking for people to give money to. It's just right now a lot of their systems are not set up for Canadians, which is too bad. But I hope you enjoyed it. This is Jay Michaels with usfasttrack.ca. Make sure you find us on Facebook, add us on Twitter at usfasttrack, and check out our blog, which is on our website, usfasttrack.ca. I hope to see you at the next event, and thanks for listening, guys.